Good morning and welcome to Resolutions for Recovery. This morning we're going to focus really on the family side of this disease, and it is a disease. Without the family's involvement, recovery for the patient that struggles with substance use, you cannot go back to a normal family life, or we'll say the normal family life, right? Whatever that means in your house, because everyone needs to participate and be respectful and understand the disease of substance use disorder and what their loved one goes through. And sometimes, unfortunately, by the family getting well, it is the precipitant for the person struggling with substance use to get well. And if we also know that the family is not going to get well, that can be the precipitant for the identified person to get well because we keep them away from their family. And who better to have here today than my good friend Karen Reese, who I just love working with you because there is no one that you work with that has a bad word to say about you, because you're so kind and considerate and zen. That's what I like to call it anyway, because you have a very calming influence.
Thank you.
Whereby sometimes I don't.
I think we, balance each other
and
well.
I don't try to be not calming. I just get a little passionate.
You are very passionate, Linda.
And to hear,
that's a beautiful thing.
Sometimes to hear what people actually say in their outside voice is incredible, right?
Right.
So and that's when I have to somehow, I feel those words come to me to really create quite the
impact. You make an impact.
Yeah, and it's not with everybody that has to happen, but there are really some people that are stuck to a brick wall, and they're saying, no, I can see through this. It's good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Well, some people are very responsive to your approach, and I think that's great because you get people unstuck. I see it.
I mean, I think the best one, and I'm so proud of this mom that's just coming through and taking suggestions now. And this has been going on. I've been talking with her probably for at least 6 to 8 months. And then, really having to say something very disturbing to her last week. Or I thought
her attention.
It got her attention, and she took the bull by the horns, and she is no longer acting like a victim.
Wonderful.
And that's going to change.
You never know what it takes.
Her other 3 children. That's going to change the dynamic in her household.
Right.
That's going to change the dynamic with everything that's going on there. And certainly she's going to feel better. And I think that's the main focus. Everyone needs to feel healthy and in wellness.
Right.
Not just, the person struggling with substance use, especially when they go away to an inpatient, they have meals cooked, they're told when to go to groups, they're supported. They should be.
Tremendous support.
Supported when they come out.
And they need that as well.
Right, and they need that as well. But everybody else is still fending for themselves.
Well, that's where you and I come in.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So what's the most important thing you think that families should know, Karen?
Well, there's so much, and so it's hard to put it into a nutshell. And that's why we have families coming.
Yes, and we don't have to put it in a nutshell.
Right. So really, it is a process, and that's how I look at recovery. It's a process for the addicted individual, and it's a process for the family members. And that can unfold over time for, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and lifelong. Or
right, because in 2 months, because they say, well, I really got this, and they immerse themselves like going underwater in a pool. They just immerse themselves in their own recovery.
Well, that's a beautiful thing when they're willing to do that. Some families participate in the family programs that are available to them at the inpatient level of care, and others come to community-based support systems and educational support programs that we provide at Thomas's Hope.
Yes.
And that's just still a drop in the bucket, in my opinion. It's planting a seed.
And that, that's all we're responsible for, is planting the seed.
Right.
And I doing with recovery coaches, if you're not going to immerse yourself, to have one person that you can really at least stay connected to better answers than you would come up with on your own.
Right.
You may not take all the suggestions that are made for you, but it's certainly better. The seeds, again, are planted.
Yes.
So you still may make those same mistakes 5 times.
Absolutely. But
on
maybe
the 6th
now with
time,
awareness, it's like the old, walking down the sidewalk, falling in the hole.
Yes.
Eventually you see it, you still fall in.
Oh my gosh, that's Groundhog Day, remember?
Groundhog Day?
Do you remember the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray? And he goes through the same day, and he comes and he steps off the curb into the puddle up to his leg. And he's like, and it goes on so many times.
All right.
And he does it every single time.
Okay.
Even though he knows.
Right. But awareness is a first step to recognize that the puddle is there, or the hole is there, and eventually we want the person, they eventually walk around it, and then eventually they go down a whole nother block.
Correct.
They don't even go down that street anymore. That's how we change. So we just want to start by planting that seed and getting families to recognize that everything they want their loved one to do, they need to do for themselves.
Yes. That's the hugest statement right there. If you don't walk a life of recovery, how do you expect anyone else to?
Right. And that they need, instead of focusing on, they don't know how to support. Now, it's understandable if you're not educated, if you haven't been taught, you really don't know how to support. So what do family members do? They worry, they try to control, they unconsciously enable.
Yes.
And they behave, and they can, go down a slope that's not good, and hit bottom right alongside with their addicted loved one. And we don't want to see that.
No.
So we want to see the family be well, so that the addicted person has a healthy system to come back to.
And that's the most important thing, because, and I've said this oftentimes enough, if someone had said to me, we need you to come up to, Thomas is in treatment, you're going to come up here, bring the other 2 children 4 days a week, we're going to educate you, we're going to create a different dynamic so that Thomas is safe coming home to a different home life. It can't stay as is.
Yeah.
I would have been there 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Or I would have said, this is not my problem.
Which is
I'm not changing anything.
Right.
It's not my problem.
Yeah.
He needs to control his own things.
Right.
Whereby, the professionals that are surrounding the loved one can say, home is not an option for this patient. It's not a safe option for this patient.
Right. If the family's unwilling to engage and there's, behavior there, we sense from working with that person that going back to that environment, there's so many environmental cues there to use, because nothing has changed in the attitudes of their family members and the behaviors of their family members. In the environment itself, they're not clearing out the alcohol or the
alcohol, the pills, do you have
not willing to make those changes.
I just say, do you have a lockbox for your medicine? And P.S., everyone should have a lockbox for their medicine.
Absolutely.
Whether or not you think you need one or not. Children visit, other people visit, could be surfing your medicine cabinet.
Absolutely.
The humidity, let's just go from a strictly point of view, right? Where do most people keep it? In the bathroom?
Yeah.
And do you want your medication in the kitchen or any place else? No, you don't. So put it away, lock it away. What's the difference?
Sure.
It's a good habit to get into. Alcohol in the house. If you say, and I've heard plenty of families, unfortunately, say, well, I'm not going to stop drinking because, he or she's coming home. I'm entitled to do whatever it is that I'm going to do. If your loved one was highly allergic to peanut butter, and it could cause them to go into anaphylactic shock and die,
right? Would
you have peanut butter in your house?
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
The answer would be no.
Exactly.
So the very thing that can kill them, you foo-foo off and say, well, that's their problem. It's not my problem.
I recently worked with the wife of a gentleman who was an alcoholic. He's had 5 DWIs, which is a lot. And she only has 1 drink with dinner, so she probably doesn't have a problem. However, she doesn't want to give that up. She doesn't want to give that up. And, he is not insisting that she do, but, I, as the professional working with her, would like to suggest that there be no alcohol in that home. So I wonder about the individual who only has that one drink, but is so attached to it. People don't get attached to peanut butter that same way.
Correct.
They really don't.
Correct.
So the alcohol, even a drink, even one, really has, it alters an individual. So even that one, you have to look at your relationship with the drink.
Exactly, because if you're not willing to give that one up, what is that saying about you?
Well, I think this individual relies on it as a way to relax, or, there's just something in it for her.
There's just something in it for her, but wow, you know what? Why don't we try giving up that drink and create for you to relax? It's summertime. Why don't you guys go for a walk every night?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Go sit outside and meditate.
Sure.
Or try something different. Different isn't bad, but a lot of people think different is bad.
And that's why I want the family members to look at their own stuff, because the fact that she would protect this relationship that she has, even if it's with her one drink, if she can't use that relationship with alcohol to recognize what it must be like for him, if she's that attached to her one drink to relax at night, think about what it's like for him to give that up.
Exactly.
And why can't she walk alongside him in a recovery? That's how you support an individual. Like, what are you, they're giving up something.
Yes. What I like to look at it too is when you come home to your house, you should be safe there.
Yeah.
Everyone should be working on the same thing, right?
Yeah.
That's just, so God forbid you have, someone is diagnosed with diabetes in the house. And it's really difficult for them to give up all sugary things.
Sure.
So we just change the household.
Great example.
When you're outside of the household and not with your loved ones, have what you need to have, right? But at least for everyone when they come home,
right,
that's safe.
Yes.
And the people that love me the most are willing to stand and hold my hand,
right,
and help me get through this.
And what's interesting, and I'm thinking about, I love this show. I always reference My 600-Pound Life, because it really shows the food addiction. I mean, to an extreme. Like, these are people who become bedridden.
Okay. Extreme.
When the doctor who works with these families, and he's got a terrible bed. I love him too. Well, of course you would. I think he has a terrible bedside manner. But he's so direct, he doesn't get into the fluff. Well, that's right. He's trying to save their life.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's true. So with that,
you need to lose 50 pounds in 3 weeks.
But he gives them a way to do it.
Absolutely.
But the thing that's interesting to me is that the family members, oftentimes there will be a family member who's supportive enough that says, you know what, and they're usually 250, 300 pounds.
Yes.
So they could use the diet too. They're just not ready to die, but are they willing to then change their lifestyle, start exercising, start eating better to support or not? And we see the families who absolutely will not. They'll continue to order the junk food. They'll bring it in, eat it right in front of,
or give it to them.
Yeah, well, that's when they're still enabling. Yes, and they do, right? These people could be bedridden.
She wanted it.
I know.
Or he wanted it.
So that's where you see the family dynamic, where does the whole family get on board with let's live a healthier lifestyle? And it's the same with addictions.
And I think that's the best way to say it. So some people, to put the framework, right? We don't have to talk about substance use. We don't have to talk about anything, right? We can simply just say, you know what, our health policy at home.
Right. Yeah.
My friend Kim Labby that does prevention encourages parents with young children. What is your health policy? Create your health policy at a young age.
Yeah.
And you add things on as children get older,
right,
and they can understand why we don't have alcohol in this house, why we don't have this in this house, right? Why we look for other ways to relieve our stress, our pain, right? And talk about them.
Yeah.
Because what are you really creating? You're creating a human that can go through life with other coping skills.
Right.
And that's what they are. So that one drink at dinner is a coping skill.
Right. Well, it's that family's social norm.
Yes.
You know, and it's so much harder for the addicted individual to break free of that environment. And it's possible, of course. It's much easier if the family makes the changes alongside, walks alongside their addicted loved one. But if they don't, the addicted person can still do that, but they need to find a community of support. If they can't find it at home, I mean, they need that community of support anyway. We need to find people who support that healthier lifestyle, a recovery lifestyle, where people are not relying on alcohol and drugs to get through the day.
Exactly.
They're not going to be able to do it in a vacuum. They need support.
They need support. You always need support.
Right.
So, you know, the very thing, I always like to look at it, you know what? I can't keep ice cream in my house. Now, I'm not supposed to eat dairy anyway. It doesn't make me feel good.
Okay.
But I can't, even when I buy coconut milk ice cream and stuff, if there's a pint in the house, I'm going to eat it until it's all gone. That's life in the fast lane.
For you.
For me.
Yeah.
So, do I keep it in the house? No.
Right. That's a strategy.
It's my strategy.
Help you not to indulge.
Exactly.
You know, or overindulge or whatever. Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's overindulging.
It's a strategy. Yeah.
So I always feel, because when you when you overdo something, right? Then you go into the,
you feel bad about yourself.
I'm such a loser. I couldn't even not
lost
eat
control.
that. Exactly.
I didn't keep my promise to myself. That I was only going to eat a quarter of the pint. Yeah.
You set yourself up for failure the whole way around.
Sure.
So I'd rather go and spend more money to buy it elsewhere
when you're out. Right.
Than have it at home.
As an occasional treat.
Because then it's truly a treat.
Right.
Then I can savor that little bit instead of saying, I know you're still in here, I'll be back. And that's what happens,
I mean, the important thing is, again, is acknowledging and recognizing within yourself your relationship to ice cream. If, you know, in this case, it's ice cream. But just recognizing your where your weaknesses lie, so that you can live the lifestyle you want, and you can put in place, and you have a certain amount of self-discipline. Obviously, maybe not right here, but you know, you're putting in strategies to help you live the life you want, to avoid the pitfalls and the things you don't want. I'm assuming that means people, places, and things as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
Always.
That aren't good for you.
Right? That aren't good for you.
Right.
So when you look at things, really look at things and look inside yourself. So I mean, through the work that I've done, really, and just being more spiritual too, I look at different relationships, and before I blame anything on the other person, I look deep inside myself.
Yeah.
What could I have done differently that may have created a different response from the other person? And if I've changed and really looked at everything and then said, you know what? You've done your work.
Yeah.
Now it's time to just say, I've done my work. This relationship doesn't work with me. This whatever doesn't work with me. I need to change the status quo. But there's always a way to look inside of ourselves before we blame other people.
Right. Well, that's you taking responsibility for your part. But if the other person can't do that, they may not be somebody you want to be in relationship with.
Correct. Or change the relationship.
Right.
Until they can see that they need to change themselves.
Their part. Yeah.
Do their part. You know, listen, you need to do your part.
It has to be like a two-way street.
Exactly right.
Right.
Exactly
and that's true with the family members of addicted people, too. I mean, you know, again, they want to blame the addicted individual often ends up as the black sheep of the family. Well, oftentimes what they're really doing is they're waving the flag to say, we're in trouble.
Yes.
This family's in trouble. Okay. I'm just expressing it this way. Okay,
right.
There's problems all around in this family that have never been addressed. They're generational, you know, and now I'm expressing all the pain for the family through this particular addiction that I have. And the family wants to
foo-foo it.
Yeah, and push, you know, they're the one with the problem. We don't have any problems. When you dig in and look at these family systems generationally, you see all kinds of trauma and addiction that have been ignored, that haven't been dealt with, and that's how it gets continued.
You know, I can, you know, when I look back and you know, we lost 3 grandparents and a divorce,
loss is huge.
Huge loss.
Yeah. And your son, you're saying, was reacted to that.
Yes. Now all three of them reacted differently.
Sure.
You know? But he, and always knew that he kept everything
inside.
Yes. So sensitive.
Yeah.
So easily, and Tom, please talk about it. Please,
Yeah. We often see that with addicted individuals, that a great deal of sensitivity.
And not knowing how to get rid of it. Not knowing how to get rid of it.
Right.
And admitting to, because it's interesting. I did a training.
Grief?
I did do the grief training, but I was training recovery coaches this weekend, and we were talking about working through things, right? And not being able to get to that point. That people need to cross that barrier, because that's the very thing that holds them in their substance use.
So to get to the place of acceptance?
Of acceptance of different things, because, they keep, even in relapse prevention, and this is what I always think about, people who cycle through relapse over and over and over again, they get close to that place where it's like, oh boy, we're back to peeling the onion, and I'm back to the same place where I have to let this go, or I have to confront this, or I have to talk about this.
And they put the brakes on. They don't want to go any deeper.
And they can't go any deep. It's not even that they they don't know how to go any deeper, because the pain is so great.
Well, they need a lot of support for that, to take that leap of faith. And it happens through relationship.
Yes.
If there aren't people in that person's life who they feel safe enough with to take that leap of faith, and usually it's a group. It's not just one person. One person's not enough.
No. So when I recognize that with a family, so working with parents, especially if you're talking about prevention,
right?
If you come home and say, oh, you think that's a problem? That's not a problem. You should only know what a problem is. You've already minimized them. You've already shut them down. You've already told them you don't have a problem.
Right.
But this is causing all that feeling inside of them. Who am I to judge what somebody else's idea of what a problem is?
Exactly.
And that's what I did learn in grief recovery. So I have very mindfully.
What a loss to one person is not necessarily a loss to somebody else.
Or for me to be so bold as to say to somebody else, I know exactly how you feel, especially if it's a parent that's lost a child, right? I say, I can't even imagine what you're feeling. I can only share with you what I felt.
Exactly.
Because now,
don't know.
with that statement, we're two different people.
Exactly.
So,
that's an important
and why me
distinction.
That I can really work through my things and stand up and be a voice? Why me? Resilience of the human spirit. That's who I am.
That's right.
Not
everybody
soul
survives.
Works. Exactly right.
Not everybody survives the death of a child. Literally.
Exactly.
Literally.
Literally.
Right. So we are all different.
We are all different.
You have different internal resources and you have different external resources.
Yes.
And you are a power of example for other folks who have gone through that tragedy.
But they don't have to step up to where I am, where I could go, where I've been. You don't have to do any. You don't have to ever. There's no comparison.
Well, that's where boundaries come in. It's just simply recognizing that we're not the same. Even if if it was your child.
Yes.
Even if it's your own child, you're not the same. You have to allow that child their own experience, and where you can, to validate that their experience can be quite different than yours. The way they perceive things, as you say, when they come home with a sad story or something that they experienced that was traumatic, minimizing that is the worst thing a person can do.
It is.
And it's done sadly. It happens all the time.
It's done sadly, and there's no criticism or judgment because life moves at such a fast pace in today's world, right? So mom and dad are working.
They're distracted.
That everybody's got things going on, and no, that's not a problem for me. It needs to be a problem for you. Little people, little problem. That little problem's going to grow into the gorilla in the room. Quite honestly, that's how I look at it. That little bit, because when you
it builds on. Yeah,
yes,
these
it builds on.
Small, what they call, they call them little traumas or small T's. I don't like that, because a trauma is a trauma. We don't know how it's experienced by the individual. So something that might seem very small to us, like they didn't want to play with me on the playground. I was rejected. That can be huge in someone's world, and it can set the groundwork for a lifetime of layers of this type of experience.
And it's those layers that really...
Because their value, their own value and their self-esteem is damaged. So, we need to mitigate these types of experiences. And if we can create a healthier family environment, at least that can be the safe place, as, we talked about.
My Gwen Us, who does the grief recovery, she likes to say, when you're a kid, you have a little baby backpack. And you start filling your little baby backpack with traumas that go unsettled.
Right.
They stay inside of you somewhere.
Right.
Forever.
Correct.
So, a trauma of being, not accepted on the playground becomes that same trauma, not being accepted in high school, not being accepted at your first job.
Right.
So we're going to pick all of this up. We'll be right back after these messages. Thank you.
One, two, three. Long before my dream of playing professional football became real, addiction impacted my family and nearly destroyed it. As a New Yorker, I can tell you that all our communities are being hurt by addiction. New York State is leading the fight in combating addiction, providing help and treatment regardless of your ability to pay. For more information, visit combataddiction.ny.gov. Growing up as a young kid when addiction was around was tough. It was, at the time, I felt like it was unfair. I had to grow up quick. At the age of 11, my father left the house after, a couple months after I found drug paraphernalia in their nightstand. And it was a tough reality to face as a young kid. And, there were good days and bad days, but there were a lot of bad ones. After my father left, we got kicked out of homes. There were people in and out of my house, and I didn't understand, why did this happen to me? Why did why did my parents have to be addicted to drugs? Yeah, going through recovery it was a long road. When I was a senior in high school, my mother went away to prison. I had to go through my college recruiting by myself. I had to go off to college. My friends' parents took me to college. And so it was tough going through those times. But when my mom decided that she wanted to change her life, she wanted to get help. My mom got sober in prison. She got out of prison and gave up drugs and regained her relationship with God. My mother works for the church now, and we have a great relationship. I tell her every time I talk to her how proud I am of her and what she's accomplished. She's a tough woman. She's been through a lot, but the things that she's done after prison have been amazing. I'm so proud of her. She got her associate's degree. We have a great relationship. She's a great grandmother to my nieces and nephews, to my children. She's always there for me when I need to talk to her, and we have a great relationship. For a while, it looked like, when you're in it, when you were in the addiction part of it, I never thought my mom would be the same. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You can change your life, you can get help, and you can have a better life and regain those relationships and have a positive effect on those people around you. I look at, when I go through tough times in my life, I ask myself, what would my mom do? Because my mom has been through, I always say my mom has been to hell and back, and she's doing great, and I'm thankful for it, and I'm proud of her. My father as well. I didn't have the best relationship with my father. When he left the house when I was 11, He left us with no car. I didn't speak to him for 3 years, and that was probably the toughest time of my life. But we gained that relationship back. My father's been clean for 3 years. His health is doing better. He's trying to be a better grandfather, trying to be a better father. And, you know, I forgive him. And our relationship is, you know, we're back communicating, and I love it, you know. I tell him I'm proud of him as well, because it's a tough circumstance. You know, it's easy to look at someone who's in addiction and blame them, and blame them for the choices they make. But it's the drugs, it's the alcohol that have a hold of them. And it's not, they don't want to be in that position. You have to understand that. They don't want to be making these decisions. They don't want to put these people in jeopardy. They want to get help. But once they decide to get help and to do something about it, there's great things that can happen at the end. Yeah, recovery is possible, and it happens to a lot of people. You know, you'd be surprised at how many people are in recovery right now that went out and got help. People out there that want to help you if you're in recovery. You know, there are people all over who you have no idea went through, they've been affected by it. You know, whether it's a family member, a friend, themselves personally, if they went through addiction. There are a lot of people that are going through issues that you've been through. So don't be afraid to ask for help. There are a lot of resources out there that can help you and get you the right treatment and to get you back on the road to recovery.
To Resolutions for Recovery. We are talking today about the importance of the family aspect of really wellness in recovery. People do recover. There is always hope. Right, Karen?
Absolutely.
Always hope. Mm-hmm. And the family really, I think, does themselves a disservice by not realizing the strength and the importance of their own recovery.
And the role that they have to play.
And the role they have to play.
Right.
Not if they want to play it. They have to play it. They do. Mm-hmm. So you have to be that shining example to your loved ones.
Well, educating the families as to the role that they have in this recovery process is really important. That's the first step.
Yes.
Change requires actual change, actions, you know,
action
change
steps.
in behavior. Mm-hmm. But it does start with the education. So I think we get families on board by educating them first.
Yes.
You know,
so
understand what it is.
We are so lucky to have you.
Thank you.
And next Thursday, the series will start again for Relapse Prevention Workshop.
Yep.
And it really does bring families through the whole cycle of substance use.
Yes, yes, yes. So we want to validate their experience, you know, first of all, because that's how you get people in. If you start telling them, well, you have to change, that's not a good starting point, because they'll never hear that. So we start.
Nobody likes to be shit on.
Right. Exactly. And they also don't know how to change. So we really start with validating their experience, which is that they've been traumatized. I mean, let's look at the family members that we work with. You know,
very traumatized.
And what happens with that trauma is
verbally, emotionally,
sure,
unfortunately, sometimes physically. You know, and still have to maintain, you know, all your responsibilities.
Yeah.
And your life.
Yeah.
Whether you're a mother or whether you're a child, whether all of
fear,
those things.
It's even just the fear, even if they haven't been abused by that addicted individual in some way, usually they are at least manipulated, we know that. the fear that they experience because they recognize at their core that they could lose the person that they love.
Yeah.
That is so traumatic.
Yes.
That the person that they love has been, they don't maybe see it this way, but they've been hijacked. They have no control over the situation. That person could die. They're in a self-destructive lifestyle and they don't know what to do.
Yes.
So we need to validate that experience.
Yes.
The impacts that that's had on them. And yes, it does sometimes, unfortunately, it progresses to such an extent because they don't set boundaries early on that they do end up getting manipulated, sometimes abused, certainly stolen from if they're in relationship with that individual. Yeah. We hear it all the time.
You do hear it all the time.
Of course, yeah.
You do.
So, and that creates a lot of anger and resentment and blame. So there's so much to unpack for these family members to bring them back to a point of compassion.
Yes.
How do we get them back to a place of compassion so that they can have compassion for themselves and compassion for their loved ones?
And when we've done the series, I love when people in early recovery come because to share their point of view now that they're removed from their substance. So we have someone thinking much more rationally than they do when they're still in active addiction.
Right.
To give that viewpoint, that perspective of how they feel to their family is powerful.
Yeah. Well, we want to educate them and their family members as to the impacts that their substance use has had both on them and the family members, because it's similar. In other words, the addict also it's not all choice. Once there's, may start off as choice, but
there's one bad choice.
One
unhealthy choice.
Starting.
Yes.
We don't know where it could lead.
And it just lights the match. It lights the bomb.
Folks. Exactly. So for the family members to understand that the addicted individual is using despite their desire to stop, because that's the nature of addiction, is we get to the point where we want to stop and we can't. I don't think the families necessarily always understand that. So we want to really explain how the brain has been changed and is no longer responding to normal life experiences in a normal, healthy way. The only thing the brain is responding to is needing another hit of whatever their drug of choice is in order to feel. Or
not their drug of choice.
Yeah, anything.
They'll do anything.
Well, anything that will release those neurotransmitters that'll at least get them altered and to feel normal, which is, because life has become so unmanageable for them.
Yes.
And the state that they're in, this dysphoric state, it's depression, it's anxiety, and the only way they know how to address it is to take a hit.
Yes.
Of whatever they're.
So when we talk about anxiety too, and now the over prescribing of all the drugs that go along with anxiety for someone with a substance use is just incredible.
It is.
Oh, no, they really do have anxiety. No, I get that. But do you know why they have anxiety?
Well, first of all, we all have anxiety. It's a matter of degree.
Yes.
To refer to it as a mental illness that needs to be medicated, to me, does not make a lot of sense.
No, it does not. And there are people that are crippled by anxiety, and we're not talking about them.
Right. That's at the far end of the spectrum.
That are crippled by chronic pain, and we're not talking about them. But when we talk about somebody that struggles with substance use, I agree with you. No one ever taught them to deal with anxiety.
Right.
When you are still needing whatever it is that you need, it does create anxiety. Because you still need, I need the money, I need to get in touch with whoever I got to get in touch with, right? With a dealer to get what I need. That causes a great deal of anxiety.
Well, even leading up to addiction, as we talked about the traumas earlier, what about the anxiety of, does he like me? Does she like me? How do I, fit into this group?
Yeah.
Who are my friends? Where do I fit in? Am I loved?
Yes.
We're growing up with these anxieties at this fast-paced lifestyle in a society that really doesn't support connection. So we're all experiencing anxiety in our society today. Like I said, it's a matter of degree. Most of us are self-medicating in one fashion or another. It's a matter of degree, but I agree with you. There's too much prescribed.
And I want to, point out too, sometimes people do that simply by really over-exercising, taking things to the limit.
Exactly.
Because that's what I have to do.
Yeah.
So I don't have to think
feeling.
about all my other feelings.
Right. To avoid feeling. Yeah. So we play games. We're addicted to our phones. Pornography. It's the number one business in this country.
Which is
which
is something you just have to.
Right. So
you have to internalize.
That's an addiction.
It's a huge addiction.
Right. So we're going in a lot of different directions to avoid feeling.
Yes.
And drugs are just one. It just so happens it takes on a life of its own because they become oftentimes physically addicting.
But we can still, yes, drugs, substance use with the use of drugs is a fatal progressive disease.
Right.
It can and it will kill you if left untreated over the course of your lifetime.
Correct.
It certainly won't lead to a life really feeling like it was well lived.
No, not at all.
But gambling can do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Families losing everything.
It destroys families.
Destroys families.
Sure.
Pornography.
Or sex addiction. Destroys
families.
Correct. Yes.
Absolutely. Food addiction.
Yeah.
Destroys families.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All of those things.
It leads to all kinds of disease.
It's a disease.
So, yeah.
So any kind of overuse of anything is really substance use.
Right.
But we'll keep it on drugs because we have such an epidemic right now.
Yeah.
And people keep saying, oh, everything's, the numbers are going down. So let's talk about marijuana.
Sure.
Because now that all the brilliance is coming out saying, oh, it's not so bad. But in Colorado, if anyone wants to read any of the reports, and they should, fatal accidents are up, all traffic is up, unemployment is up, homelessness is up 150%.
Wow.
So I don't really care how much revenue is derived from legalizing marijuana.
Of course.
It just went into 100 different social service needs.
Right, exactly.
Plus the destruction of
on the
families.
back end. Yep, that's the back end.
Plus the destruction of young minds.
Yes.
So as, parents who are going to talk to their teenagers, oh, pot's not so bad. And I can't tell you how many parents go, they're not doing that heroin.
Yeah.
They just smoke and drink. How old is your child? 15. Oh, well, that's brilliant.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I call it as I see it. So you're just that ignorant? You think that that's okay?
Right. Yeah. Well, these are parents who are often using pot or alcohol themselves. I'm assuming that's why they would have that attitude towards their kids.
I think, unfortunately in today's world, parents are afraid of their kids a lot of times. And I don't mean afraid physically. They don't want to engage with the yelling.
The difficult conversations.
The difficult conversations. And the difficulty of saying no.
Correct.
And having that whole whirlwind.
One of the biggest obstacles I face when I do an intervention with a family who has called me because they think the families, they're in crisis, their loved ones killing, they want to do something radical. Let's try to stop this. Let's confront and see if we can't provide some services for this person. The biggest obstacle I hit is, well, they're never going to talk to me again. They'll be angry with me. They'll kill themselves. Okay, and the addicted person will make those threats. They will.
Absolutely.
If they think that's what will get you off their back.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's also just manipulation.
Well, it usually is.
I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
That's manipulation.
Yes.
I'll
and
do
it gets
anything.
The family
Don't do
to back
that.
off.
Absolutely.
So that's where I think you're right. The fear of trying to confront this problem comes in. But as you said, if we start when they're younger and we start the education, and we let them know it is not okay. Like it is not okay for you to use marijuana as a drug, alcohol as a drug. These are drugs.
Vaping. Right?
Yeah.
Look how much damage vaping is causing.
Well, they don't even know the half of it, but it's horrible.
They don't even know. So if you think that vaping is good and cigarettes are bad, well then, you know what? As a parent, What's so funny is, well, I'm not going to get them that vaccination because that can cause damage in their body. Really?
Right.
I'm going to buy organic, but we allow this to happen.
Yeah. Well, there's the hypocrisy.
It's
sure.
just, it's crazy, right?
So run into this, this is a type of denial.
Yes.
That is prevalent here. And that's what we try to confront, and that's what we try to, again, reach people first through connection, because we're not going to be able to address them in a more confrontational way until we assure them that we care about how you feel, we recognize how you've been impacted. Now let's talk about how we can help.
Right. Exactly. I can only speak for myself. At one point in time, Thomas was, and he said those words, I'm gonna kill myself. Unbeknownst to him, I did call the police, and they took him to CPEP. Did they keep him there? No, because he didn't mean those words. But you said them, and I'm going to act on them.
Right.
I didn't back down from what I was doing.
Right. That's the appropriate response.
I engaged differently.
Yeah, exactly.
He never made that threat again. Because I would follow through with that.
Sure.
So, you need to be educated on, what's so funny is, if you put all people struggling in one room and their parents, the manipulation is all the same.
Yeah, back and forth.
They say the same.
That's true. If you loved me, I'm going to kill myself, you're driving me to drink, that's what families would say.
You caused me to do this.
Sure.
Right?
All the blame. And shaming that goes on.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, it's very common.
I can't believe you don't trust me. All of those things to get what they want when they need it, when they want it.
Yeah. Or some families don't talk about it at all.
Right.
They completely disengage. That's his life. That's her life. We don't, and we don't talk about these things. So I see that too, surprisingly enough, in some family systems. But most are more, fighting, and when there's addiction, there's usually upset around it and chaos around it. Just depends on the family system.
It does. And, we didn't even touch on, which I think we'll save for next week, but we can talk about siblings.
Sure.
Right? So, the one mom that we were just saying, I don't know why that came to my mind, but I said, how do your 3 other children feel about mourning the death of their mother? And I think that was a big impact on her. I go, you're not present in their lives.
Right, because she was mourning the death of her son, who hasn't died but is in active addiction, and then so she's completely not available to her other children. So that woke her up, apparently.
It did wake her up. It disturbed her enough that it woke her up.
Yes.
Because kids need.
Well, that's just it.
Everybody firing on all cylinders, right? And each child needs, and yes, the statement is you're only as happy as your least happy child. Well, that's true. But when you have somebody in active addiction, unless you provide everything, all their drugs and whatever they need to continue that, then they'll be happy, seemingly happy, right?
There's no no.
But if you stood back and said, we're going to change the rest of us.
Yeah, and create a family system that the sick and suffering would want to rejoin.
Yes.
As opposed to a lot of the use that goes on in the addicted person. I can speak for myself as someone in recovery is the pain in the family system. As I said, they're expressing it.
Yes.
They're expressing it, and they when they want to go back to that family for some connection, that's not what they get. They don't necessarily get connection. They get the shame, they get the blame, or they get something that's going on between the parents or the other siblings. I mean, the amount of estrangement amongst family members in addicted family systems is huge, and it's painful.
Very painful.
So if we can start healing that system where people are reconnecting, that might lure back the person who, that's what they're seeking, is connection. We're all seeking it, frankly.
And unfortunately for the siblings, they do hate their sibling.
Well, they do. They get angry. Well, they're angry. Yeah.
And they say they hate them. They don't really hate them. But they're angry that it's been done to their family, that they're not the normal family, that they have this insanity ensuing. And you have to give them voice to those feelings.
Right. Well, because one of the reasons they're angry is mom and dad have been duped, or
focused.
Right, and they're focused on the addiction, and they're being neglected. They can't say that. They can't say I'm being neglected, and so they compensate.
Well, they can't say they're being neglected because there's nothing wrong. Okay, so I didn't go to your game. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you scored the winning goal. Great, good for you. Mm-hmm. You're minimized. You're not validated.
Yeah,
you're not important.
Well, they'll go into the overachievement role where so that the parents have no stress over here in their way of looking at it. I'm not going to cause my parents any additional stress. Now, there will be, it depends on how many siblings there are, but we often see these splits where one person's, the bad sibling, the black sheep, and they're doing all these, and the other one's hyper achieving.
Yes.
And not causing the parents any stress, but they're suffering.
This tremendously.
With tremendous stress and the unexpressed resentment expressed towards the sibling that's in active addiction. And they oftentimes want to get as far away from that family system. And again, you have the disconnection.
Yeah. We worked with a family that the one brother was graduating medical school. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the other brother said, you owe me $100,000 because you paid for their schooling. In active addiction. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Really?
Wait, the addicted individual said, you owe me $100,000?
To the parents. You owe me $100,000 if you helped him with medical school and college. Then you need to give me that money.
Well, that's delusional.
Of course it is, but try explaining that when the parents say, "What do you think he meant by that? What do I think he meant by that? Can we call that insanity?" Right.
Yeah. Well, there can't be any fairness, and we can't look at it that way in a family system that's so broken. We're not treating fairly. No, that's not what's happening here.
Correct.
When you're not responsible, you're not treated like a responsible adult.
Yes.
And and then are they even in your home? I mean, there's so much to look at there.
So much to look at. So much.
Yeah.
Too much.
Right.
Almost.
Right.
Too much.
Because if you're allowing that addiction in your home, how is that fair to the rest of your kids?
Exactly.
It is so not okay. And yes, your child who's suffering is suffering, but it's not fair to let the entire family system suffer at the same level. That person needs help. You must intervene. Interventions come in a lot of different forms. If you stop enabling, the intervention will come.
Correct.
Right?
So let's define enabling. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I always like to just say doing for people what they can do for themselves.
That would be one example, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So is your loved one capable of making phone calls?
Right. Yeah.
Can you help them create a list? Mm-hmm. Not create the list, help them to create the list and get the necessary paperwork together that they're going to need while they're on the phone?
Yeah, and this is assuming they're going into treatment.
Correct. Or sit there with them while they make the phone calls. That's called, compassion. That's called helping your loved one.
Well, understanding what type of support to provide.
Yes.
If someone really doesn't know, you educate. But while they're still inactive, never mind going into treatment, the type of enabling that goes on is quite severe.
Craziness.
Yeah.
Oh, they just wanted to get a haircut, so I gave them $30.
Right, not recognizing any money that you're giving them is going to drugs. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, these are the types of things that parents do over and over again, and it's a hard lesson to learn. And that's why it's a parallel process, because the addict, too, is promising themselves that they're not going to spend that money on the drugs, I
know.
So there's a learning process on both sides of this disease to really understand that when the disease is active, there's really very little other than stop enabling for the family members, so to allow the consequences to take place. So this person over here recognizes, maybe I do need help.
Yes.
As long as you're providing any kind of support to that person, whether it's financial or housing or a job, family members do that. They let them work in the family business. They don't show up.
And they pay them.
Yeah,
right?
Sometimes, right?
Yes, and they pay them.
The enabling is endless. Really, what goes on.
The enabling is endless.
Right. So why would this person change?
And and that's why even when helping families, you don't want to put them out on the street. I completely understand that. But when everyone goes to school, work, wherever you're going, that person also has to leave the house. They're only allowed to be home when you're home. Why is that a bad thing? Well, it makes them think that I don't trust them. Do you trust them? No. Okay.
Right.
So we're just telling truth.
Right.
I will give you a place to live, shower, and eat dinner with.
And these are the expectations on your end. These are your responsibilities.
Correct. But when I leave for the day,
you're right. You have to be out of the house, up dressed, looking for a job or whatever. Yes.
whatever that may be.
I'll be urine testing you later in the day. Better
Exactly.
not be any drugs in your system, or you'll have to find somewhere else to live. Yeah, so you can have those expectations. Proper boundaries would be no drug use in my house, no drug paraphernalia in my house, no disrespect, no drug using friends. You know, it's amazing what goes on in these homes.
It's you know and
it's
you
not
don't
a safe
you
place.
don't get it. It's not a safe place for anybody, and you seemingly don't get a chance to catch your breath ever.
Right. I think what happens is it's incremental,
Yes.
sadly, and
Like domestic abuse.
Exactly.
The
and the
beating
family
down.
doesn't recognize, right? And they keep accepting the apology, and they keep accepting I'll change, and they keep, feeling hopeful for the change, and it happens again, and it progresses.
Yeah.
And the family member who's tolerating that tolerates greater and greater insanity and behaviors they never thought they would tolerate, just as in domestic violence, yes. Until we find ourselves
And feeling like you did do something wrong.
well, yeah, blaming
You
yourself
made
all
me
along.
use. You made me. That fight that we had this morning pushed me right over the edge. No, the fight that we had this morning was, made possible by the affected individual so that they could get me doubting everything that I thought, right? And making me feel guilty
Right.
for their substance use. And that's exactly where the affected person wants you to be.
Yes.
They know exactly how to press every single button so
Right.
that you are doubting.
They know the right buttons.
Yep, that you are doubting the whole circumstance. And and I learned, and I remember doing this with Thomas, I would just say, I see that it's not a good time for us to discuss this. We'll pick this up when you're calmer. That would infuriate him. But I would also go and lock my door and scream at him silently.
Right.
To get
your
everything
feelings out. So you didn't
that
give
I
it to
needed
him.
to get right, but he never saw me sweat.
Well, that's great. You were steady, yeah.
But you
If can
needed
be
to do
calm
that.
and steady is so
And-
important in the face of addiction.
Did I feel that way on the inside?
Right, no, of course not.
Hell no.
Yeah, but you needed support for that part of you that needed to scream, that needed to cry, that needed to rage, whatever. And that's what we want family members to have. It's not, their feelings are valid, but screaming and raging at the addicted individual is not
at each other.
helpful. Or at each other, because that's what happens too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The divides that come
right,
with
right. everything
that goes on.
Correct.
They want that division. They don't want.
The family on the same page.
They don't want the family on the same page because if I got everybody, right?
Correct.
The circus going on over here, I can slip out the side door, do what I want, come back.
Right.
Just give the, I always think of the playground, right, that used to spin. Give it another push, keep everybody spinning. And
That's
the
a good
affected,
analogy.
the affected
Yeah.
individual can go on under the, under the wire.
Right. And that's why in interventions, when we actually organize an intervention, the whole goal is to get the family on the same page. They don't have to agree initially. We're going to work towards getting everybody to understand through education that they're all on the same team. They don't have to fight one another.
Right.
But at the very beginning, when we can get everybody on the same page, it creates a powerful front that the addicted individual hasn't seen before, because they're used to the chaos that you're just describing, where everybody's running off in different directions to cope or fighting with each other, and they're peeling people off, and they're developing an ally here and pitting mom against dad, and
Absolutely.
All that.
It's a very well thought out plan by the affected individual. I can't believe that we're even out of time.
Oh my goodness.
But Karen's going to be back next week, and we're going to just pick up, coming into the summertime, I think is an important time to lay out some groundwork too. I think we can do that. For parents to keep an eye out, and also just, numbers go down on inpatient treatment in the summertime. So we need to be prepared. It's like hurricane preparedness. We need to be substance use prepared.
Sure.
I hope everybody has a great weekend and relax and enjoy this beautiful weather. Take care.